Hi, welcome to Off Script. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Today on the show, we are taking a look at The Marvels, Disney's newest superhero features out. Second to last superhero feature of the year, actually. The only other one coming out this year is Aquaman. Thank God. We're also going to take a look at Priscilla. We did not technically intend to do this movie. We didn't announce it last week, but Andy had some spare time this week. He went and saw it. I haven't seen it, so it's a mini review. You can look forward to that. I'll be getting all the goods from him on what's going on in that feature. We took a look at Anatomy of a Fall just a couple weeks ago. Exciting new film out of France from director Justine Triet. Indie darling this year. A lot of people talking about Anatomy of a Fall. Stick around. We're going to tell you whether or not it's worth your time. We got to talk about new trailers coming out. We have a ton of news to cover because we were off last week. It's an insane week at the movies, Andy. I don't know how we're going to do it all, but we're going to do it. We're going to move through it. And our first story this week, SAG-AFTRA has approved a deal to end the historic strike in Hollywood. It is done. Rest in peace. Long live SAG-AFTRA. Everybody's made a compromise, and some actors are happy, and some studios are kind of happy, I guess. There were tears. People were getting calls over Zoom that the strike was over. People are already going back to shoots. Andy, what does this mean for the movies?
It means we can get back on track, back to work. Like the day after the strike ended, there were already announcements for new projects or resumption of projects in various stages of development. There were things like, I guess it was Beetlejuice 2 had literally 2 days left to film. And other things like that. Lots of stuff scheduled to start in the spring. Some delays happening that we'll be talking about later, but we're back to work, and it's over. Longest strike in history.
It's hard to believe. There's a lot in here. Who got what? What are the benefits? The short kind of summary from Variety. I don't want to get too far into it. Following the 118-day strike, we have penned a deal with the AMPTP, and SAG-AFTRA says they are getting minimums increased by 7%, 2% above the increase received by the Writers Guild of American Directors Guild. So more minimum pay, protections for actors against artificial intelligence, along with the pay increase. Also includes a streaming participation bonus. There's a bit in here about healthcare. The union said the contracts are worth more than $1 billion in total. Most importantly, besides people getting paid what they're worth, hopefully, I think we can look forward to things getting made again. Like Andy said, things are kicking back into production. I was already hearing stuff on Instagram about Stranger Things actors getting immediately called out to shoot. Like within hours of the announcement, producers are getting on the phone. Hey, we're shooting next week. Get your stuff. Like everybody's been waiting for this. The writer's strike is over. The SAG-AFTRA strike is over. We're finally back to making movies, at least for the next 3 years. I think both of these were 3-year deals, and that's kind of the long and short of it. I guess as far as the whole thing goes, Andy, we've been covering this for weeks. What do you think? Closing thoughts on the strike? Where are you at? Strikes? My gosh.
Well, I mean, it was good that they, the actors and writers really stuck it out and, made the studios bend the knee. Like I've reviewed some of the contract stuff. It's complicated, but the big picture is that a lot of increase in compensation, in healthcare, limits on AI use, also compensation for AI use. I don't think they got the they wanted to get a percentage of every streaming subscriber. I don't think they quite got that. But a historic win in a very tough industry. So good on everyone who had to strike for sticking it out as long as they did.
Yeah, 118 days. It's impossible to overstate the emotion involved in all of that from everybody in it. Historic strike, historic victory. I know they didn't get everything they wanted, but it seems they'll be back seeking negotiation again in 2026. So keep it here on Off Script for more on the upcoming strikes. I don't know if there will be another one. We'll see. Our next story this week, The Legend of Zelda is getting a live-action movie. This is crazy. This news dropped, last week? We didn't do the show. Nintendo announced this is in conjunction with Sony. Following the success of the Super Mario Brothers movie, except this one's not going to be animated. We're going to a land far, far away in live action. Andy, what do you know about this?
So, just like you said, off the back of the massive success of the Mario movie comes The Legend of Zelda. And, Nintendo did not make a movie for literally 30 years. Like, they held on to their properties so tight after the disaster of 1992's Super Mario Brothers movie. But after making you make $1 billion hit, and now all of a sudden you're going to be on board with other things. Legend of Zelda, almost as equally recognizable as Super Mario. It's going to be huge. People are already talking cast and rumors because it's going to be live action. It's not animated, right?
Right,
So
absolutely.
So yeah, it's gonna be like a fantasy thing. It's gonna be huge. Like, and one thing I've heard of is that while superhero fatigue may or may not be here, the era of the video game adaptation might be upon us.
It's going to be interesting to see where they kind of go direction-wise with this, because you're right. We don't have a cast. We don't even really have a crew. We do know the film is being directed by Wes Ball of the Maze Runner trilogy. And more recently, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes. That new Planet of the Apes trailer you've been seeing, he's doing that movie. So my man knows how to do escapism. He's definitely got that down, right? He knows how to do scale, I think, pretty well. My big go-to for a Legend of Zelda movie for a minute was Denis Villeneuve. He's obviously got other stuff going on, fair, but I think it's exciting. I don't know who they'll cast. I think everybody will be mad no matter who they pick to fill these roles. I don't know, frankly, what direction they're going to go in. Legend of Zelda trends a little bit more mature. It's a dungeon puzzler RPG, right? Whereas Mario's like a chill 2D platformer at its core. So I think the Mario movie could be a bit more like Kitty, especially with Illumination, doing the animation. This is going to trend a bit more mature. I don't know if we're still aiming at like 8-year-olds or what, but like it can't do exactly what the Mario movie did. It's going to have to do something different. Keep it on the script for more. I don't know where they go.
Maybe as a live action, it definitely does. If they really wanted that kitty audience, they would probably keep it animated.
I mean, I don't even. It's funny because like I'm a Zelda fan otherwise, and I'll keep this quick because we got a lot of news to get to. But I don't even know what direction they go like in the games. The games have been changing. The last couple that have come out, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, are radically different from the other titles. Like, so I don't even know if you go like old school or you do like this new thing they're doing now. Like I couldn't even, I have no idea. I think everyone's going to be mad no matter what you do. But maybe it'll be great. Who knows? Maybe Wes Ball will pull a rabbit out of a hat. I think Nintendo's certainly hoping he will. Speaking of rabbits, we got to talk about production schedules getting moved around. Following SAG-AFTRA reaching their historic deal, Deadpool 3 and Captain America 4 have been kind of moving, kind of shaking. Really, Disney has been moving things around, and I'm glad they finally came to the negotiating table with something reasonable. But it seems like they're going to pay for this long wait because the Marvel schedule's getting shook up. What's going on, Andy?
So a lot of things moving around. Deadpool 3 was slated to come out May 3rd. It's now 2024. It's now being moved a few months to July 26th, 2024. So middle of the summer. But the thing is, all the other planned Marvel movies are all getting moved to 2025. So there is only one comic book movie from Disney coming out. There are some from Sony Marvel coming out next year, but those haven't been pushed. They were pushed earlier. But some other movement we've had. Captain America: New World Order, which was supposed to come out in July, is now coming out February 14th, 2025. Thunderbolts, which was supposed to come out next Christmas in 2024, being moved to summer 2025. Blade, which I don't think Blade is ever going to happen, but Blade was supposed to come out February 4th, 2025, is now slated for November 7th, 2025. So literally 2 years from now. We'll see, because that movie was supposed to already come out. So more delays in the MCU because of the strikes, and that was pretty much anticipated.
For what it's worth, this may give them more time to start pivoting and maybe like enhancing some of these features after the fact, maybe figuring out better ways to tie them together. Marvel has been receiving a lot of criticism lately, especially here on Off Script from your boys. About how their movies are tying together and why a lot of decisions in the films begin to feel inconsequential with so many different projects, Disney Plus shows. Like, it's just difficult to care a lot about the next Marvel movie because there's so many of them now, right? Like, there's so many Marvel projects coming along, and we'll be talking about the Marvels here in a minute, but seeing things get moved around in the back end, maybe not such a bad thing. Maybe it'll give them time to run things by test audiences, right? I know the new Captain America feature, New World Order, is getting a bunch of reshoots. They're having stuff done because apparently they didn't test that good. Thunderbolts is going to take a lot of time to coordinate because they got a big cast. Blade seems to be like, it seems like somebody said this on Twitter. Marvel is like playing chicken with Mahershala Ali to see if he'll drop before they like actually get the picture together. They were supposed to shoot. They were within 6 weeks of actually shooting on that film last year or early this year. And then the director literally walked off the project. We covered it on the show. It was a really quiet story. Nobody really talked about it, but that movie is struggling to get made. They can't get a script together. I don't know what they're going to do. But hopefully they can take this time to maybe massage things a little, maybe get a little goodwill back. I know Iger's talked about them slowing down projects, which is smart. They want to aim for more quality, less quantity. And regarding Deadpool 3, that's great. I'm glad Deadpool 3 is going to hit its release date. Deadpool 3 infamously did not stop shooting for the writer's strike, but absolutely stopped shooting for the actor strike. Like, well, our writers can go, but we have to have our actors, so whatever. Deadpool 3 is a bunch of squares. Anything else on this one, Andy? I know we got a couple more to get to.
I'm sure there are a lot of other things. A lot of other movies have been moved. We started seeing that back in September with the tennis movie that I can't think of the name of with Zendaya. That was the first. Poor Things got moved. Dune got moved.
Oh yeah.
A bunch of Sony Marvel stuff got moved to next year. So we are still gonna have. Don't you worry. We're still gonna have plenty of comic book films next year. They're just not going to be from the MCU.
You mean Luca Guadagnino's tennis movie that I can't remember the name of right now either. Some poor listener out there. If you know it, hit us in the comments. Like, just tell us what it is. I don't remember.
Somehow I could remember Luca Guadagnino's name, but not
I would have remembered it if I could have seen it by now, but no, it's fine. Two more stories this week. Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, has a writer. This is an exclusive story from the Hollywood Reporter. At least it was exclusive till we started telling you about it on this podcast right here. James Gunn and Peter Safran are putting together a Supergirl movie. They have a writer. I don't know anything about this woman, Andy. What's going on with Supergirl?
Right. So they have tapped writer Anna Nogueira. I'm
a lot of vowels.
Name. Yeah,
it's a good name.
To pen this Supergirl movie. This was just announced today, and she's been an actress and a writer, has worked in TV and film and stage, so no stranger to the craft. But the interesting part of this story that reveals is that this same writer was actually tapped by the previous helmers at DC, Walter Hamada, to write a Supergirl spin-off movie from The Flash based on Sasha Calle's character that we met in The Flash. So she was going to write a Supergirl movie for old DC, and they kept her on to write one for new DC. But they're not going to be the same. Probably not going to be the same story. Not the same actress either playing this. They're going to loosely base it off Tom King's very recent run of Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, which ran in 2021 to 2022. This is exciting news because they're moving forward on these projects. Like I said, the big surprise was that she had already kind of started a Supergirl movie, so kind of back to the drawing board. But I'm glad that they kept her on, and I'm excited to see what she brings.
Yeah, James Gunn explained in a video released on Twitter at the time that, quote, Superman is a guy sent to Earth and raised by loving parents. Where Supergirl in this story is a character raised on a chunk of Krypton. She watched everybody around her perish in some terrible way, so she's a much more jaded character. Not your farm boy from Smallville. And I think that's probably a good thing. I think Supergirl in The Flash was, like, surprisingly cool. I know she's a really simple character and a very different read, and really she was just kind of a stand-in for Superman. I get that. It was still kind of a Kal-El thing. But, like, even still, I think there's, like, a lot of potential for what that character could be on screen, especially coming off the Marvels. I watched that movie yesterday, right? Like, I think there's definitely angles you can take female superheroes and make them rather intriguing. So I don't know. I think it seems like a good move. It seems like James Gunn likes something in that old script, right? Like, I don't think he'd hire back the same screenwriter if he didn't think that maybe, she's got some juice. Andy, have you read any Supergirl? And
I
what?
have. I've read this
Where's this
run,
headed?
this specific run, Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow.
Mm.
Uh, really interesting. I really love this. It's just 7 issues. Definitely go pick it up if you can. It kind of follows Supergirl, who again has lost her whole family, and a very jaded person. She's grown, and she ends up kind of taking on this sidekick to kind of go on a quest for revenge, help this girl whose has been killed in a galactic chase to kind of capture this bad guy. And they have adventures along the way, but you have a very different character. Like Supergirl is generally very angry. Like she has a very short temper. She loses her temper. She kind of goes. She was a Red Lantern for a while because they're fueled by rage. It's a really good story, and I'm anxious to see what how they'll translate that to film. But I'm pretty excited for that.
Yeah, me too. Especially since you're excited, being the comic reader. Like, if you're saying, "Hey, this is probably going to be cool," then like me, a non-comic reader, gets much more excited because that's where everything cool comes from. One more story this week from the comics. The Marvels is struggling at the box office with a $47 million opening. It's funny. I saw somebody on Twitter say, "Wait a second. Killers of the Flower Moon only made $23 million, and these movies had nearly the same budget. Why is the Marvels getting so much hate?" Andy, do you think maybe you can explain to people why Marvel's opening to 47 million is not actually a good thing for Marvel? That actually turns out to be a negative.
Yeah, a lot of things going on here. Number one, this was a very expensive movie, $250 million budget, lowest opening for any Marvel film, but still fairly strong. 110 million globally, so it's not terrible. But the problem is these movies generally don't have very good legs. They're going to make everything up front. But it's kind of a sign of a little bit of superhero fatigue, which I think it's more to do with just a mediocrity fatigue that people have. This is coming after Quantumanium, which was lame, The Flash, which was lame, several Disney Plus TV shows that a lot of people didn't watch. A couple of characters people haven't seen elsewhere. There's a lot of reasons why there wasn't a lot of interest. And unfortunately, the first Captain Marvel was a huge hit. Made over $1 billion, opened to 150 million its opening weekend, but it was also sandwiched between the 2 Infinity War movies, and so like those are 2 of the biggest movies in history. So and that's a time when Marvel hype was at its peak, and we're not kind of there anymore. So it's not the fault of the movie by any means. Also, dates changing. This was actually supposed to come out. This swapped dates with Ant-Man 3. So this was actually supposed to come out like 8 or 9 months ago, and it ended up coming out now. I think it would have been a very different story had it come out then.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's particularly funny about this movie underperforming was Disney's scramble to promote it immediately following the strike ending. The strike ends, SAG-AFTRA strike ends at 12:01 a.m. on Wednesday. By 10 p.m. Eastern on Friday night, Brie Larson is on The Tonight Show. It's less than 48, less than 72 hours. Amazing. Nearly 48. They were so quick to try to scramble people to tell, "Hey, please go see this cool movie." And we're going to talk about it in a second. But I think what Andy said is completely valid. You're looking at a combination of superhero fatigue followed by a full year of superhero stuff, followed by general interest in the characters coming from 2 different Disney Plus shows and the film. We've talked about it on the show a lot in the past about how the Marvels may do. I really thought we would see worse numbers for Guardians, and Guardians actually are pretty good. But I think this may be, I don't know, maybe a bit of a bellwether for where things are headed with Marvel, maybe a bit of a direction change, or just, lacking a couple key elements that typically will draw big box office numbers, like a couple of big names as your stars instead of this film featuring like Iman Vellani in her first film role ever, It's different. It's offbeat. I'm excited to talk about it. Any other thoughts on news before we just jump into the review, Andy? Because I think that's probably the next step.
So I think another factor is just how much this has been delayed. This was actually supposed to come out in 2022, and then everything got pushed, and then it just kept jumping through the calendar. It was February 23, July 23, finally November 23, and it's just been pushed so much. 4 years after the first movie. I don't remember much of what happened in the first movie, which is kind of an issue. And it's just there's a number of factors, and unfortunately, it to me it kind of has nothing to do with the quality of the movie.
Yeah, I agree. I don't. Having seen the film, I can say I do think it's a little maladjusted based on what's in the movie. And I suppose I should save the rest of my thoughts for the review. You ready? How you feeling? Feeling limber? You ready for it?
I am ready.
Perfect. Please take it away.
The Marvels. So this is the long-awaited follow-up to 2019's Captain Marvel, starring Brie Larson as Carol Danvers. The titular Captain Marvel also stars Tiana Paris as Monica Rambeau and newcomer Iman Vellani as Kamala Khan / Miss Marvel. The plot's really complicated, so I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. Our three superheroes kind of get entangled every time they use their powers. If they use their powers at the same time, they switch places. This makes for a lot of really funny scenes early on, and then they kind of have to work together and coordinate to how to like work as a team. And they have to fight against Zawe Ashton's character Darben, who there's a lot of kind of like space mumbo jumbo going on that relates to the previous film that's a little bit difficult to keep up with. But basically, the bad guy is trying to restore their planet and is taking resources from other planet, which is very destructive. And so the Marvels go after her to stop this from happening and kind of set the universe right, while also learning to work as a team. And also there's some interpersonal drama between our three characters as well. I thought this was a lot of fun and actually enjoyed this a lot more than I kind of expected to. But Zach, what are your thoughts?
So The Marvels is the 33rd film in the Marvel franchise. I also looked this up. It is Samuel Jackson's 15th appearance in a Marvel project, which is crazy. It's a long-standing series. This movie has to take functionally 3 protagonists and put them together. And I think, like, on its face, the gimmick of the Marvels is good. And I think that's my favorite thing about it. It ends up being surprisingly fun with 3 superheroes who swap places immediately if they use their powers at the same time. That's neat. And I've complained in the past that I wish the heroes were a little bit more dynamic. I wish I had, like, Tom Holland's Spider-Man and, like, I don't know, Loki and Hawkgirl or something. Like 3 people with drastically different powers, because our 3 here all have, quote, light-based powers. They're like electric. And that was short-sighted because I hadn't seen Miss Marvel, the show, on Disney+, and I don't really remember Monica Rambeau from WandaVision, and I did, like Andy, hardly remember Captain Marvel. But I'm really pleased to say, like, all 3 of these heroes end up being surprisingly fun. And while this movie does make me feel old in its radical presentation of like nearly all VFX shots, it's crazy how much VFX is in this movie. Like with a bouncy script and a good runtime, and Iman Vellani putting all of the comedy in this movie on her very first time in script features back. I think this movie is actually better than I thought it'd be. Not great, not bad. I think it's fine. Andy, what's the best place to start talking about the Marvels?
Well, why don't we start with our cast, and I'm going to start with Iman Vellani, who plays Miss Marvel, the kind of teenage hero. She had a show on Disney+. I didn't see it. Apparently, it ties in some, but it's not like a must-watch. But she's hilarious, and I was really surprised because I didn't really like the trailers for this movie. She looked really annoying, and like the gimmick didn't work for me, but in the movie, she's hilarious. Like, she has so many good one-liners, and she's like this person she's balancing like her family with also she's fangirling after Captain Marvel, and but also trying to be like, you know, be an Avenger and work with Nick Fury. And she's just hilarious. Like her dynamic with her family and her, like I said, her dynamic with Captain Marvel is just, she was really funny. She's a highlight of the movie. Really, I mean, puts the whole thing on her back in a whole lot of ways. And I hope we get a whole lot more of her.
Yeah, I think part of like what's tough about managing the script is having your 3 main characters who all have their own backstories. A couple of them intertwine, like Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau have history. A couple of them have superhero names. Captain Marvel and Miss Marvel both do. Monica Rambeau does not. Like it's a little It's a lot. Plus, you got Samuel Jackson in there running around with the B plot as Nick Fury. It ends up being scattered, and the movie opens with like 3 or 4 flashback scenes, which is nuts. Like, because it has to. It has to explain our villain and our conflict. You have to give us at least a little of Captain Marvel and what her deal is. You got to explain a bit about Miss Marvel and how her powers work with this odd animated sequence that kind of works, but is really jarring and made me feel really old. I was just like, oh my God, I can't keep up with what's going on here. But once you get through that, like, I think the script works because Iman Vellani plays like this young girl who is, basically your comedy goof, right? She's like Chris Farley and Tommy Boy, or like Will Smith and Men in Black, right? And then your straight man characters are going to be Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau, both a little older, both have a bit more experience, both know how to fly. Like, both of them are kind of like your stand-up heroes, and then Iman Vellani is like on the back end as kind of like the teenager who's like along for the ride, but also excited to be a part of it. And it would be so easy for that to be annoying. And I don't know what writers they got to write her character. I don't know if it was her coming up with stuff on set, but her delivery and their writing works perfect, pitch perfect. And she ends up being a lot more charming than annoying. She's funny when she needs to be, sincere when she's not. Like, genuinely gets probably the best scenes of the movie, followed closely by, Captain Marvel and Monica Rambeau. They're both fine. I think Teyonah Parris is good, and Brie Larson is fine. You know, she's stern, but does a fine job. There's your 3 leads.
Yeah, she, that's kind of the only issue is like Iman Vellani is so good, and the other 2 are just kind of there, and they kind of lack a lot of personality. And I've heard some discussion where some people think that Brie Larson is just like so done with these movies that she's just kind of phoning it in. I don't think it's that bad, but she doesn't have the kind of personality that you associate with a lot of heroes. That's what part of what was so brilliant in like the first 3 phases of Marvel, when you had Tony Stark as Iron Man was this cocky businessman, and then you had Captain America who was the Boy Scout of the team and always did the right thing, and they had such strong personalities that you could tie to their character. And we don't really get enough of that with our other 2 characters, particularly Captain Marvel, who's the lead of the film.
Yeah.
So it'd be interesting to see if she still kind of sticks around after this movie.
It's funny because Kamala Khan, Miss Marvel, she aspires to be like Captain Marvel, and she has her whole room's full of Funko Pops and posters, and she wears a t-shirt with Marvel Comics on it, like it's meta and fun. But it like alludes to all these adventures that Captain Marvel has had in the universe, right? When she's off world or off colony or whatever in any other movie, like she's been to other planets and done other things and been part of diplomatic relations, and this goofy scene in the middle of the movie. And like, I all I kept thinking is like, boy, I sure would have loved to have seen these adventures. That would have been great. But like, instead we got one movie, and then she's just been busy and everything else that she hasn't been an Easter egg in, And like, I get it. Like, this is how production works, but it just doesn't seem like there's much for this character to be a fan of, right? Like, Captain Marvel is just kind of this elusive, lore-told individual. Monica Rambeau, you get a bit more gas because she was in WandaVision. She also doesn't get a flashback. It's just explained via dialogue how she got her powers, but I think she somehow ends up feeling a bit more grounded. Regardless, I think the one character who's really done with these features is Samuel Jackson's Nick Fury. There was a time when Nick Fury was supposed to be a serious character. Yeah, in this film, he's either sitting down or leaning in 90% of his shots. He is mugging to the camera. He's doing the Ryan Luther. Reynolds Deadpool. Yeah, right. He's doing Ving Rhames Ethan from Mission Impossible. Like that's how this feels. Like, I couldn't believe how done with it. His face paint looks like Crayola crayon. They just like snacked on set. He was barely there for 3 days. Like, he is cashing his checks, and good for him. I'm glad he's getting the bag. But they got to stop using Nick Fury in these movies. Good God. His whole subplot is, I think, probably the worst part of the movie. It's not particularly funny. It's hardly alluded to.
I'm not sure what it actually is now. That I can't really remember it. Honestly.
Yeah, it's really odd. Like, and again, like the movie's really busy concentrating on your 3 leads. And I should say, very, 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 in a very fun fashion, presenting this dynamic of the three of them swapping places. It starts off goofy. They're all in three different complete places in the universe, right? Like Kamala Khan's in her home, up in her bedroom, and Captain Marvel is in some alien spaceship fighting baddies, and Monica Rambeau is hanging off the side of a space station just out of orbit of Earth, like looking at a weird jump gate, which is a thing now in these movies, like big portals that enable you to teleport instantly through the universe. This is part of what I mean when I say these movies make me feel old. I feel like I've missed 5 Marvel movies, and I know I haven't missed five Marvel movies, so I don't understand where we're at, where we have like more of like a Star Trek kind of setup to the universe now with hyperspeed and jump action. And I was like, what are we doing? I haven't missed many of these. I think this is just kind of like Captain Marvel, how they've decided to move things forward in the world, right?
So that's kind of, this is a good time to get into plot, but I kind of thought the same thing. I was like, this is kind of a Star Trek plot. Like if you take away, if you take away their powers, like there is, it's a Star Trek movie because there's all this space stuff, and it's like, well, this nation and the aliens from this planet and the aliens from that planet, and
the Skrull and the Kree. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it sounds very Star Trek-y. And it's a good thing this movie is really charming and really funny and really entertaining because the plot is all over the place. Like I said, there's this big thing. They got to stop the villain from stealing resources from other planets. But it's real complicated backstory of like the Skrulls and the Kree, and they're on this planet and they're on that planet. And I kind of messed things up on the planet they were on. And then this movie is actually a sequel to like 4 properties. It's a sequel to Captain America, to WandaVision, to Ms. Marvel, to what's the other one? Loki, actually, in some ways, and Secret Invasion, I didn't see. And so there's a lot of plot threads in here that kind of come out of nowhere, and they don't really go anywhere either. And this movie is very short. It's an hour and 45 minutes. It's I think it's the shortest Marvel movie ever. It could have actually been a little bit longer, which I never say about anything. Like, it almost goes through the beats a little bit too quick, and we don't get enough of our plot explained. We also don't kind of get enough kind of emotional depth going on with our characters because there's some personal drama kind of happening between them as well, and we don't get enough time with that.
I should say I was impressed at how fast the movie moves through Act 1, because at some point it's like it's like action every second. Once our characters kind of start swapping places, you have like, it's probably like a 15-minute continuous action scene functionally bouncing between the three of them in 3 different places, whether they're fighting aliens or aliens getting pulled through one portal to another or whatever. That gimmick works great for action. It is wildly confusing to try to keep up with, but fortunately, like, we have some pretty good decisions behind the camera with Nia DaCosta, who will choose to basically keep the camera in one setting, mostly Kamala Khan's house. Like, it basically stays there with her family for most of the swapping, and so you just have your characters bouncing in and out of a fight scene rather than trying to move your audience through 3 different settings, which is wise, I think. And then additionally, once our characters get together and actually start to figure out how the gimmick works and how they change powers and whether it like carries perpetual motion with them, you get a really fun scene in Captain Marvel's like ship where they're like experimenting and they have like jump ropes and bouncy balls with a goofy Beastie Boys soundtrack. And then of course, like towards the end, you're going to have like fight scenes where our characters are bouncing between at will, like using this intentionally to fight baddies. All that's really great. That's all really solid. That makes for fun action. I think like good chemistry between heroes on screen is important, not only in their emotional moments, but in their like actual physical using their powers moments, right? It's like when Captain America picked up Thor's hammer at the end of Avengers. Like, that stuff is cool. We like seeing like other heroes use the other one's powers. That stuff's neat. That works great. Unfortunately, I also think our villain's a little rote. Not
villain of the
inspired. Month. Yeah, it reminded me a lot of like evil Daenerys Targaryen, like just kind of like, okay, sure, villain of the month. The Nick Fury subplot's not that great. I do think it's better than it's being perceived, unfortunately, and I say that confidently, being one of these people who's been ragging on this movie. I definitely was not that stoked to go see it, and by the end of it, I was like, okay, all right, hey, you know what? it's a pretty good effort. And that's saying a lot because it seemed like Nia DaCosta really wanted to write this one off. She bailed from production a couple months before they were done with post, which these things take a long time anyway. I'm sure she was sick of working on it. She said it was Kevin Feige's film in interviews. Andy, like, look at it, kind of the direction here. Do you think she was trying to get out of the way of a bullet or what? Because it's not that bad. Like, it's not like I've seen much worse Marvel features for sure.
Yeah, no, not at all. Like I said, Ant-Man 3 was bad compared to this. Flash was like, I will never rewatch those. I would go see this again. I would go see this in theaters again. Like it's a really fun time. And I saw it with a pretty full crowd. Crowd was loving it. Crowd was like cracking up at all the jokes. Like when there's a couple of things revealed at the end, and when we get our post credit scene, people going wild. It's a fun time, and it's an entertaining time at the movies, and that's largely of what we want. It's got a lot of problems narratively, and from what I understand, it had a lot of reshoots too, but that is kind of standard for these Marvel projects. It's getting more hate than it deserves, but I hope they can kind of see the good for what it is and kind of push through it, and the lessons that Marvel needs to learn are a bigger issue than just this movie.
Yeah, I think you're right. I couldn't agree more. Any other thoughts on this for recommendations?
I think I'm ready.
Andy, would you recommend The Marvels?
I would. It was a really fun time. I was really surprised. I was not looking forward to it. I didn't like the trailer. The characters felt annoying, but when I actually saw it, it's a lot of fun. It's really funny. Iman Vellani is a standout. I think she's going to be a big deal in the MCU to come. She has so much personality. We have a lot of other superhero fun with Brie Larson and Teyonah Parris. Like I said, the plot's a little all over the place. It's a little bit of too much space politics, mumbo jumbo. It feels a lot like Star Trek in places with a rote villain, but it's such a good time that you don't care about the stuff that doesn't work.
Yeah, I think I'm in the same boat. I think Marvel's is better than I thought it would be. Like, I really had low expectations going in. It came out feeling better. It's not perfect for sure. If anything, like I know I keep saying it makes me feel old, but like real talk, dude, there's so much VFX in this movie. Like my eyes just glaze over. It reminds me of when I'm watching like Jurassic World. Like at some point I'm like, nothing I'm looking at matters or is real, right? I'm just waiting to get from the scene to scene. And that's not the right audience for this feature, right? Like this is not exactly who this is aimed at, but I think if you're going to see it with a bunch of people, family, need something to throw on, date night, maybe for the kids, like Marvel's is pretty good. It's definitely not bad. Definitely not bad. And I can say that with confidence because I've seen the feature. With that, we got to keep moving. My God, we got a lot to do.
Yeah.
Really quick, we need to get through a couple of trailers. Then we're going to do a mini review for Priscilla. We still got Anatomy of a Fall coming up at the end of the show. And this thing's already running long. And I know y'all's time's worth something. So, Andy, please, what do we call this segment?
It's time for the trailer park. So we got a number of big trailers came out this week. We're going to start off with Mean Girls coming out in January 2024. This is a musical remake of the original 2004 Mean Girls, which was written by Tina Fey, comedy classic. And this is, like I said, it's a remake. It's not like, the same girl's 20 years older. It's new characters. It stars Andrew Rice as the character originally played by Lindsay Lohan, Renee Rapp, who's a newcomer singer person that I don't really know, but I've seen some of their videos since, and they're pretty funny. And I just about turned to dust when I saw Not Your Mother's Mean Girls, because I was like, oh, is it really that old? And it's really that old. So it'll be 20 years since it came out, the original. This looks like a lot of fun. It's a musical. We didn't really hear any musical numbers in the trailer. They're kind of hiding that part for some reason. But it looks like a lot of fun. I'm definitely looking forward to it.
Yes, I'd like to establish for anybody out there that's a musical fan that this film is doing the same thing Wonka is doing. You can't tell it's a musical from the trailer. They did release a follow-up trailer that ran in front of Marvel. It's a little shorter. It's like 30 seconds. That actually features a little bit of singing, and the logo has a musical note in the A, like Mean Girls, a little musical note up there. In that trailer, in this one it's here too. Yeah, if you're watching the live. But I think it's an interesting move just to not really tell people it's a musical. Like, well, let them get tickets, and then they'll find out. Otherwise, I'm not sure what would make this movie better than the original. The original is getting a remake for a reason because it's really good. Love Tina Fey. I just haven't seen enough to be convinced. So we'll have to see about Mean Girls. Next film we need to talk about is Ghostbusters Frozen Empire. As the resident Ghostbusters fan on the podcast, I'm not really excited to talk about this movie, but I'm looking forward to having a quick conversation. Ghostbusters Frozen Empire is the direct sequel to Ghostbusters Afterlife, which came out just a couple years ago. It follows the Spengler family, who has left their former rural trappings of the previous film and moved to New York City, where they're going to team up with the original Ghostbusters, right? Dan Aykroyd and Ernie Hudson and Bill Murray, who they got on set for 1 hour for this movie, barely in the trailer. It's great. Probably the only shot of him in the whole movie. Where they're going to team up and go to their secret ghost busting lab where they've developed new tech, like to bust ghosts, with Carrie Coon and Paul Rudd tagging along, right? They're guardians. But then an evil force comes in from the bay. It's a second ice age unless the Ghostbusters can rally and defeat the evil to stop it. This movie's not actually directed by Jason Reitman, original director of Ghostbusters. Ivan Reitman, his son Jason Reitman, did Ghostbusters Afterlife. This is directed by Gil Keenan, who co-wrote this and the previous film. So he's good friends. They still kind of work together. I don't know why Reitman ducked. All the Ghostbusters are in it. Andy, do you care at all about Ghostbusters Frozen Empire?
It looks fine, but it's confusing because I thought at the end of the previous movie we had 4 different Ghostbusters. It was basically 2 teens and then 2 like younger kids, and now to those 2, because there was a girl and someone else, and two of them.
There's a kid named Podcast, right? That was the guy.
Yeah. They we've lost 2 of the Ghostbusters from the previous movie. They've been replaced by Carrie Coon and Paul Rudd, so now it's a family affair, and I just found that bizarre. It looks fine. I think this is a property that is from the 80s and needs to stay in the 80s because they keep trying to just remake it in that style. And it's like, if you're going to redo this 40 years later, you got to update it, man. You got to stop doing this like, oh, we got to evacuate the city plots that they used to do in the 80s all the time. Like,
yeah,
you got to get rid of the station wagon, man. Like, get an Escalade that's the Ghostbuster car. Like, you got to completely modernize this franchise, I think.
Andy and I had like the wildest fan castings for like Ghostbusters reboot. Just a couple years ago, we'd have people like Randall Park on there, or like even way back when Seth Rogen was a bit more interested. I think he would have been a good pick. Now Ghostbusters has moved in a radically different direction. It's fine, right? Like obviously Sony's making money. What do they care? But it is a little weird. Yeah, I'm a big sucker for that old movie and Ghostbusters 2 even. And these movies are different, and I will go see this. But it's definitely not your dad's Ghostbusters, just like not your mom's Mean Girls, right? What else are we talking about?
Inside Out 2 had just a short teaser. This is, of course, the follow-up to the first Inside Out, which came out in 2015. Riley, the main character girl, is now a teenager, and so she's going to be having some new emotions join in. We know that there's anxiety, ennui, a couple of others. So there's a bunch of new characters. Weird thing though, Amy Poehler is back as Joy, but Bill Hader did not return, and neither did Mindy Kaling for pay reasons. Apparently, Amy Poehler got paid $5 million to return, and they were just offering the other two $100,000, and they were
$100,000.
No.
Which, like, for what it's worth, Amy Poehler had a way larger performance in the first movie, and I'm sure this movie's probably the same way. Those two characters are probably side characters, but man, that is quite the pay disparity. And Mindy Kaling and Bill Hader are not slouches, right? Like, those are pretty big names.
Yeah,
I don't know a lot. Go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. We don't get a lot of like the trailer just shows like this construction crew coming into like the control room and replacing everything, and they say, well, you got some new guys back, and that's what we're looking forward to. So we know the original were joy, sadness, anger, fear, and now we also are being introduced to disgust and anxiety. Anxiety played by Maya Hawke.
Yeah.
So this looks fine. I mean, this was a very successful Pixar film. The sequel will probably do fine, but it's just kind of devoid of. I don't know. We'll have to wait for more.
It tragically is a film that like probably shouldn't be made. Iger announced this right next to Toy Story 5 and Frozen 3, and everybody in the world rolled their eyes. And now we're seeing like the first trailer of those three come out, right? Like next it'll be Toy Story 5 and then Frozen 3, or vice versa. And it's like, boy, y'all need to. I don't know if this is the winning strategy, to building long-lasting brand recognition. But what do I know? I'm not Disney. They've been around for 100 years. They'll probably be around for 100 more. One more animated feature to talk about this week. We got to talk about the trailer for the Garfield movie. I added this to the outline. I wanted to mention it. There's a Garfield movie coming, right? Like, you might have heard about it. We finally have a trailer. It stars Chris Pratt as Garfield. I wish that was a joke. It isn't. And this trailer totally opens like Warner Brothers Scoob trailer, if you remember, where it had like Puppy Scooby-Doo and like Kid Shaggy meeting at summer camp, and they're like, we're going to be best friends forever, before you cut to like the larger version. Same gag. You got the cutest cat, like kitty in the whole world, little orange Garfield, out in the rain when he runs across the street and sees John Arbuckle, hot off a breakup again, eating pizza alone in a restaurant. The two of them bond and they get together. And then you see a flash forward to modern Garfield that we know, right? And Odie at John's house, and Garfield is eating all of the food and getting into antics, and voiced by Chris Pratt. And I just feel like I gotta get on this movie podcast that I'm a part of and talk about Chris Pratt's like sterling reputation as a voice actor, because I feel like it's genuinely the worst part of this whole thing. As soon as his voice comes out of that character, you're like, oh my God. We're back in capitalism land, right? Like the movie magic is gone, and Chris Pratt is getting voice roles because he was hot when he booked the Lego movie, and then that did good, so he got the Mario movie, and then after that he booked this movie, and like that's just how the industry works. Any hot takes on the Garfield movie, Andy? What do you think?
Looks like movies for babies. The voice again, it's just Chris Pratt being himself, walking in like, I could do this role. Like, there's nothing specific to it. Also, the animation style looks like, it doesn't look like and maybe this is probably on purpose, it doesn't look like the comic strip Garfield that we're all familiar with. It's very unique style. They've changed it some, and I was like, I don't know why you would change it, but they did. I'm definitely not going to be seeing this, and I don't know how Chris Pratt keeps getting work.
Would it make a difference if I told you Garfield's father in the film is voiced by Ving Rhames in the second film he can sit in all year?
You mean Samuel L. Jackson?
No, it's Ving Rhames, I swear.
Samuel L. Jackson.
I gotta look. No, you got me going now. I was looking at this just before the movie started. I was like, no, it's him. I swear, Garfield the movie. I think they're both in it. I want to say that.
Oh, okay.
I do think they're both in it. But now I gotta fact check live on the podcast because God, it's Samuel L. Jackson. Damn it! Damn it! All right. Okay.
Honestly, that's a bigger draw than
it's true.
Pratt, honestly,
we should stop talking about trailers and start talking about our next film, because we got to move through this. We got a lot to go. This is a mini review. We don't often do these on the podcast, but Andy saw this feature. I have not seen it. We thought it was worth covering. Andy, please take it away. I'll follow up with questions shortly after. Give us your thoughts.
Priscilla. So this is the kind of, not biopic, but story of Priscilla Presley, based on Priscilla Presley's memoir, starring Kaylee Spaney as Priscilla and Jacob Elordi as Elvis. And I saw this a couple of weeks ago. Really fascinating movie. It follows her courtship and it doesn't shy away. Like she is 14 when they first meet, and he kind of pursues her, seeks her out, invites her to these very like adult parties where people are like drinking and smoking and just being adults, and she's a 14-year-old, doesn't know what to do. And so the movie chronicles her life from meeting Elvis, getting married, moving to the States, and what that was like, and kind of the terrible life that was like, and before ultimately leaving. It's a really incredible film, and Kaylee Spaney is a star. It's not an Elvis movie. It's about Priscilla, and man, it's a tough watch because he was pretty terrible to her as portrayed by this movie. The Elvis estate is not happy with this movie. Lisa Marie Presley, before her death, was not happy with this movie. But like I said, it's based on Priscilla's memoir. It's shot in a really incredible way. It's directed by Sofia Coppola. At no point does their relationship ever feel romantic or like something to aspire to. It was very carefully just portrayed this kind of incredible power imbalance between these two. I think Kaylee Spaney's probably going to get an award nomination. Same thing with Jacob Elordi. He does a great job of being Elvis and not, Austin Butler famously like became Elvis for several years, like lost his voice, didn't see his family, and Jacob Elordi kind of just showed up and did it. It might be better. Really incredible film. It's a little long in the end, but I think it's definitely something to check out. And I think it's actually Sofia Coppola's most successful film so far. It's doing pretty well at the box office.
So I got a few questions to jump in here with, and number one, I guess, is how does this movie look following Baz Luhrmann's Elvis? Right, like movie made a ton of money, Oscar nods. Austin Butler, took the role. He studied it for years to get it together, and then people on Twitter are dunking on him like Jacob Elordi picked this up in a month, right? And like kind of already had the voice, and just it sounds much smaller. And additionally, you're right, Sofia Coppola did not get the rights from the Elvis Presley estate. They did not support this. There's no Elvis music in this movie, as far as I know. There's just time-appropriate covers. So I guess knowing all that going in, to me, having not seen it, it sounds a whole lot like this would be a lesser feature, but a more intimate feature. How would you speak to that? Do you feel that way?
I mean, it's definitely smaller in scale, but it's also, Baz Luhrmann is loud and bombastic, and he's a real entertainer. And this is a different kind of movie. It's a portrait of her, of this 14-year-old girl being like whisked away into this incredible life, just crazy life, where he takes her to Vegas when she's like 16 and is like gambling at a table with other famous people. Like it's mind blowing. But he kept her very much as a pet. Like she kind of just stayed upstairs in his room at Graceland and wasn't allowed to leave, wasn't allowed to have friends, wasn't allowed to go out, like had to read all the tabloids in the papers all the time about him and other women when he was out working out, making movies. And she kind of has to put up with this for a long time. She puts up with a lot of abuse, and she just doesn't know any better because she was taken away basically as a child. It's very much a portrait of the dynamic of their relationship as much as it is. And again, it's not an Elvis movie. He's in it, obviously, but it's not about him. And Sofia Coppola does a great job of just always keeping the lens on Kaylee Spaney, who is in almost every scene. Like, she carries this movie.
I saw a clip that was released from Priscilla, which features Priscilla finding like what looks like a love letter from a fan or something for Elvis, and she's in his house, and she goes to him. He's on the phone, and she shows him and says, "What is this?" He goes, "Oh, you know what? I should help you pack your bags. You're leaving tonight. Actually, somebody book her a flight. You're going." He walks in her room, throws down, immediately starts putting it. Look, it like on just that clip by itself seems wildly abusive, and like it definitely feels like that would be a part of what we're seeing in this film. But one of the things that was interesting about Baz Luhrmann's Elvis story is how much Elvis was also a young kind of fish in a really wide pond, where people like Colonel Tom Parker would manage him and maybe take advantage of him and push him around in ways in the industry that like he was not privy to and didn't understand. He had an ailing mother, right? Like Elvis obviously suffers his own problems. With that in mind, how does Priscilla handle that, if at all? Do you see any of that? Is he like kind of also a vulnerable individual, or is he a monster? I mean, like, what are we looking for here?
No, he's kind of terrible the whole time. Like, he, especially since she's so young, he gaslights her all the time. He tells her like how she's got to look, how she's got to dress, who she can be seen with and can't be seen with. Those kinds of things. And there's he gets physical with her quite a bit. There's a fair amount of physical abuse that happens in the movie, as well as emotional abuse as well, like just being like kept locked up as kind of his pet. It's not a flattering portrait of him at all.
No. And that I think leads into my last question regarding the Presley estate. Lisa Marie Presley had this quote. It is really specific. She said, quote, of Sofia Coppola's script, it is, quote, shockingly vengeful and contemptuous. She said, my father, Elvis Presley, only comes across as a predator and manipulative. As his daughter, I don't read this and see any of my father in this character. She went on to tell Coppola she would speak out against the film after it's released. I'll be forced to be in a position where I'll have to openly say how I feel about this film and go against you, my mother, and this film publicly, because Andy's right. This is Priscilla Presley's memoir. Andy, having seen the film, do you understand why Elvis's daughter would feel so strongly about this? And do you think maybe she might have felt differently if she'd seen it? Do you think maybe she just saw it on the page and thought, oh, this is bad? Or do you feel like, no, it's pretty damning?
It's pretty damning, but also, I mean, she was like 2 years old when they got divorced and was taken away from Elvis, and then he died not too long after. So, like, realistically, she didn't really know him, and she obviously didn't know him as a partner. And that's kind of the dynamic. It's just like, she wouldn't have been around, and she wouldn't have seen any of the warts and all things that we kind of see in this movie. And that is, like, again, it's based on her memoir, which she helped collaborate on the script with. So it's, I don't know how much more accurate you can get.
One more question, Andy. Would you recommend Priscilla?
I would. It's definitely one of the best of the year. Really well shot. I love the eye that Sofia Coppola has for filmmaking. Great performances from Kaylee Spaney as Priscilla Presley and Jacob Elordi, of course, as Elvis. It gets a little long in the third act, but it's only an hour and 50 minutes. But really solid. Definitely catch it if you can.
Yeah, and that's Priscilla. I wish I'd seen it. I'm kicking myself for having not caught it. I'm hoping I will here in the next couple of weeks before it leaves theaters. If you have the chance, go check out Priscilla while you still can. And with that, we've got one more film to move to. Normally, we only do 2 in an episode. I know it's a big one this week. It's okay. We'll move through this one quickly. I'm excited to take the summary on it. The movie is Anatomy of a Fall. So Anatomy of a Fall is an indie darling that's been getting a lot of attention this year, in the year of our Lord 2023. It is from Justine Triet out of France. It is a small feature, small cast, and it is rather clinical. It is the story of Sandra, Samuel, and Daniel, a small family living in France at this wonderful 3-story cottage up in the mountains. It's snowy. Sandra and Samuel are both writers. Sandra's having a bit more success than Samuel is, and the two of them are kind of at odds a little bit. And one day, while Sandra is taking an interview with a local reporter who wants to know more about her new book, Samuel's playing music rather loud upstairs while he's fixing up their attic, renovating. And their son, Daniel, who is partially blind, goes out for a walk with their dog, Snoop. He returns home to find that Samuel has fallen out of the 3rd-story window by the attic, or maybe was pushed, and has tragically died in their driveway out in the snow. Obviously, a lawyer shows up to represent Sandra because there's something that's happened here. Her husband has been mortally injured, right, in one fashion or another. And the state, or I should say the country, France, meanwhile, puts together I guess like a prosecution to try to say that, hey, we think there might be foul play here. This famous writer may have been murdered by his wife. Anatomy of a Fall is much of a courtroom drama, actually, in a court that's not American. It's surprisingly fresh and different. And is very much a look at the moments in a relationship that may seem insignificant or not important at the time, or maybe even meaning of one thing, and then how that can be shifted and turned and perceived differently when suddenly, like, events lead a lot of people into perceiving what could otherwise be inconsequential. It's Anatomy of a Fall is what, just over 2 hours, two and a half hours long. It's a little long. A little long in the tooth, and also a surprising amount of English in this film, I should say. So if you're afraid of subtitles, you'd be surprised at how much of Anatomy of a Fall you won't be reading. You'll be hearing. The movie's Anatomy of a Fall. Andy, what do you think?
Man, there's so much going on in this. Like I said, I had heard a lot of buzz about it. It won the Palme d'Or. at Cannes. I think the last four winners have been women. Julia Ducournau also won last year for Titan. Um, Incredible movie, and it's less concerned with whether or not she did it or not, with a lot of the dynamics of their relationship. And I've heard an interview with Justine Triet where she says, part of what she wants to present is the prejudices we bring to people initially, because everyone seems really great when we first meet them, and kind of the more we learn about all the characters, we kind of learn that like people aren't uh, there's a lot of tension in this marriage. The husband seems to be depressed. He's not a success. He's an unsuccessful writer. Meanwhile, Sandra is a very successful writer, and there's issues of has she been stealing his ideas? There's issues of infidelity. There's a lot of kind of sneaking around going on. Their son is partially blind due to an accident, which may or may not have been preventable, depending on who you ask and which parent. There's so much here, and the dynamics of it are really interesting. And it's just very very grounded. They recreate. It's not it's not these courtroom scenes where you get I want the truth. You can't handle the truth. It's none of that. It's very procedural. Very much presenting evidence and counter evidence, and discussing legal strategy. It's a whole lot of that in the courtroom.
Yeah, I don't want to compare it to something like Law and Order, because you like when I think courtroom procedural, that's what I think of, right? Or like not West Wing, but like an episode of CSI or something. It's not quite that. I'd liken it almost more to something like 12 Angry Men. Like it's a much more kind of thoughtful look at a prosecuting system and what evidence like appears like in the wake of a big event, right? Like a good example, at one point, Sandra tells her lawyer very early in the film, when he's first arrived at the house, to kind of get a look at how things have been in the weeks since, obviously, or the days, I think, since Samuel's demise. And she says, "Oh, he was playing music really loud to make me angry because we've been fighting." And he says, "Did you tell the prosecution that?" She goes, "Oh, no, I didn't say that." And it's like, it's an interesting detail, right, for us, the audience, to hear very early in the film that she says, "Oh, he was doing it to make me." He was being aggressive in the way he was presenting himself in the open as this kind of like hidden antagonistic force. It's actually really clever the way they kind of introduce him with this really loud rendition of PIMP 50 Cent, right? Yeah, it's great. Yep. Really, really odd, but actually really charming. Additionally, like later in the film, there's details that come out, right? Text messages on his phone before he passed away that it's like, oh, well, who were these two? What was this about, right? Like, and she, this now ailing mother, has to defend herself and defend her son and their livelihood and explain that, hey, this is the reason this is, and I just feel like he must have jumped. That must be the only way. But then suddenly the prosecution, Act 2, says, oh, no, there's a very clear way this could have been foul play. Here's exactly how this could have played out. And suddenly we in the audience are not really given the decision to decide who did what. A lot of that actually falls on the shoulders of another character, Daniel, their son, who's partially blind, because he bears witness to at least parts of this. He hears them talking before he leaves for the walk. He's the one who finds the father when he comes back. And because he can't see particularly well, due to instances that are explained in the film, he has to kind of be this like moral bellwether a little bit, and to what he can remember and can't remember. And you get like just a really fascinating back and forth from a state that otherwise is doing its job, right? A prosecutor who's very, very brilliantly acted. His name is Antoine Reinard. I don't know him, but he's great in this movie. You should do more.
Really incredible.
Yeah, really fantastic as this just like hard-hitting guy, a judge who like really seems to kind of have her mind set one way, and then a woman who ultimately is just trying to defend her and her son so that she doesn't lose everything. That is, of course, if you don't think she pushed him, and that's part of what makes this movie so fun.
Yeah, there's a lot of ambiguity, and when, like I said, when you first meet everyone seems great. That you think, well, there's no way she would have done this or could have done this. Like she's a loving mother, she's she's a successful writer, she's very pleasant, and then it's like, but then you get more details revealed and there's just more and more ambiguity, and you're like, well, you're never really given enough to make a decision one way or the other, but it's definitely you're given enough to say, yeah, it's possible. I wouldn't put it past her.
Right. And you said it great. Like, it's more about the perception of you publicly than it is about like the truth, which is strange. The lawyer says it a few times. She says, you believe me. I didn't do this. And he's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what I believe. Like, what matters is like what's presentable and what everybody else thinks, like it doesn't, whether you actually committed a crime is almost irrelevant at this stage. Like, because if you want your life to continue, like, we have to present this defense, and this is the best way this looks, and this is why we should say it this way, and don't tell them this detail and tell them that detail. Like, really interesting and methodical and like I said, like analytical in a way that I think is really refreshing, even with a long runtime. It's an intimate script. Justine wrote it with Sandra in mind as the lead. Her and Samuel both share their same names as their respective actor and actress. They just called them that on set. They shot it really fast. It was a low budget. It's a small cast. Why do you think this is getting so much attention, Andy? Like, why is this winning the Palme d'Or? Right? Like, what does this movie have that other movies don't?
It seems to be a very captivating drama. I do feel like it was a little overhyped to me, but that often happens with these, kind of festival award winners. This is what happened with Aftersun last year. That's why it took so long to watch it. It is a really gripping drama. It has a lot to say about men and women and relationships. That's really what's on trial, is her relationship with her husband more than anything. And like I said, what didn't happen, and everything is so inconclusive, and so both sides just kind of go after each other. The prosecution is hell bent on proving her guilt, and sometimes it seems like they have good evidence, and a lot of times it's not really, but they're just kind of sticking through it. So, it's just the courtroom drama is really compelling. The performances are really great. Sandra Hüller has an incredible, really big scene near the end. I think those are the reasons. What about you?
No, I think I'm in the same boat. Like, I think it's charming because it's offbeat, like in a way that I think people don't expect. You just like, even watching the trailer, I thought, okay, I kind of know the beats of this or where it's going to go, but it's moments where it lingers. It's moments where it subverts in a way you wouldn't expect that I think make it so exciting. And yeah, really pushing this idea that like it fundamentally is not about whether or not a crime was committed. It's about the perception of whether or not a crime was committed and what that means. And like, I think it's really fascinating. It's really cool to spend time in that space. I mean, similarly, like totally inversely, Aftersun does the opposite, right? They give us, the audience, the idea, the kernels that, hey, maybe there's more here than meets the eye, and it's up to us to dig in. But Anatomy of a Fall instead stands back and says, look at this whole parade. Look at this whole charade of how this court system works and how this goes together, all to ultimately help people determine how they feel about a situation and where it might have gone and how you will be judged going forward because of that. Like, interesting, right? Like, in a world where you shouldn't care what anybody else thinks, in Anatomy of a Fall, what anybody else thinks is all that matters, really. And like, that's really fascinating, I think, in a way you don't expect, especially coming out of France with a little film, with a little budget, and a little cast who turn out some movie magic, right? Andy, would you recommend Anatomy of a Fall?
Yeah, I would. It's definitely one of the year's best. Like I said, it's been winning awards on the festival circuit. I think it's definitely going to be up for either Best Picture or definitely Best International feature. And I heard Sandra Hüller might get a nominee for this. She's also in The Zone of Interest, which is something that's going to be coming out that we'll be keeping an eye on. Good performances, really compelling drama. It's a little long, like it's 2.5 hours. It's long for a drama. It gets a little long in the third act, but other than that, highly recommend.
I'm in the same boat. Would recommend. I think Anatomy of a Fall is really fun. Get yourself a cold brew or a glass of wine or something. Sit back and just kind of take it in. It's long. I know it's long. There's probably a way to watch it like in halves or parts, like, because it is a bit slow in the middle, but you'd be surprised how much rope you're given in that 2.5 hours. It seems simple. There's more to it than Andy and I are telling you just on its face. You should check out Anatomy of a Fall. It's really cool. Good movie to kind of twist your mustache to and think about, as you're sitting there watching. And that's, God, Off Script episode 232. Andy, jam-packed episode today. I don't know how we did it. I know we ran a little over time, but not too far. We're not doing too bad. What are we watching next week?
So there is a ton coming out. There are 8 movie releases happening in 1 week, basically.
My God.
Because of the Thanksgiving holiday. I'm going to go over those first. So this Friday, the big release is the Hunger Games prequel, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. That releases on November 17th, along with Trolls Band Together. Take the kids, take the family. That's going to be huge, too. Taika Waititi's soccer drama comedy, Next Goal Wins, starring Michael Fassbender, also comes out November 17th. And the one that we're going to be taking a look at, Thanksgiving, which is a horror movie based on a trailer from the Grindhouse movie, which is pretty old now, from Eli Roth, had made these fake trailers in that movie. And it's finally come to life, so we're going to be checking that out. And we're also going to be taking a look at The Holdovers, which is Alexander Payne's new drama starring Paul Giamatti. That looks like a lot of fun. And then also Thanksgiving releases, 4 big releases on Thanksgiving. Napoleon, Ridley Scott's historical epic. Wish, which is Disney's new princess drama. Dream Scenario, which is the Nick Cage film where he appears in everyone's dreams. And then Emerald Fennell's Saltburn also comes out on the 22nd. So a ton of movies, 8 big releases in the next week. We're going to have some winners and losers when we come back. But that's what we're watching.
Insane week at the movies. 8 films. I don't know what the studios are thinking. I think if anything is getting dragged along the bottom here, it's going to be Dream Scenario and Saltburn and Next Goal Wins, right?
Yeah.
Because like Trolls and Wish are both going to do fine. Hunger Games will do okay. I think Napoleon will get big numbers. Big numbers for Ridley Scott. Next Goal Wins is going to get trashed. Like there's no way people are turning out to see that movie. Maybe. I don't know. Like I just don't. A
It's
tropical
too many
film
movies. It's
during
too many
Thanksgiving. starring Michael Fassbender. Like I don't know, man. Maybe not. It's too many movies. But I'm excited about Napoleon. Not super excited about Thanksgiving. But I think that movie will be self-aware, right? It's got to be. It has to know what it is. Like so, I think at least that'll be fun. We'll see. But if you liked the show today, Off Script episode 232 or 231 last week or 230 the week before that, anything we've done, anything we're working on, if you like what we're doing, if you've listened through this far, thanks. First off, thanks for listening. Really appreciate it. And secondly, if you could do us one more favor, one more solid, and just, follow us on some social media platform. You might already follow us on Facebook. You might already follow us on YouTube. Big things going on YouTube. We're on Twitter. We're on Instagram. You can follow us over there. We're on all kinds of podcast outlets: Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, iHeartMedia, right? Like we're on all of them. We're on Deezer, I think we're on Castbox. You can follow us on any of those, right? If you do us one solid, just pick one, whichever one's your favorite, whichever one you never even visit, right? Throw us a little bit of a follow. It would help us a ton. It actually helps any podcast really that you listen to, like Real Talk, some industry advice here. Every podcast needs the help. So if you have the means, do us a solid and throw us a follow, or subscribe. Even subscribe to Off Script Film Review. You get new episodes delivered straight to your phone every single week, every Tuesday when we do them. That'd be a great way as well. Movies are expensive. Podcasts are cheap. Off Script Film Review is absolutely free. Just because Andy and I like seeing movies and talking about them. And while I'm thinking about it, you can check out our website, offscriptfilmreview.com, and you can email us correspondence, your reviews, your thoughts on things we've seen or haven't at mail@offscriptfilmreview.com. With all of that in mind, my gosh, what a show. Jam-packed, 232, one for the record books. I'm Zach Lewis.
And I'm Dr. Draper.
Thanks for watching.